Good morning, kapwa ka-Pilipino. Magbukas na tayo ng ating librong history book. History of the Filipino People by Agoncillo and Guerrero. Today is 3 January 2023. History of the Filipino People, Part 3, Reform and Revolution. Topic number 13 na tayo. The Filipino-American Hostilities. Basa. The Filipino-American hostilities, the American insistence on the evacuation by Aguinaldo's army of the strategic points along the Manila Bay Area, the refusal of the American military authorities to allow the Filipino soldiers to enter the city after its surrender, and the American limitation of the areas to be occupied by the Filipino troops after the mock Battle of Manila led progressively to the deterioration of Filipino-American relations. The misunderstanding that followed these incidents climaxed in the signing of the Treaty of Paris without consultation with the Filipinos. Attempts, however, were made by a mixed commission of Filipinos and Americans to relax the tension between the two peoples, but the American members of the commission tried to prolong the sessions without trying to improve the situation because they were waiting for the American reinforcements which were then on their way to Manila. Finally, on February 4, 1899, an American sentry shot a Filipino soldier, resulting in the outbreak of the Filipino-American hostilities. The Filipinos fought at a disadvantage, for they had no sufficient arms with which to fight the enemy, but it took the Americans almost 3 years to conquer the Filipinos. American Apostasy. It must be remembered that it was the Americans who first approached Aguinaldo in Hong Kong and in Singapore to persuade him to cooperate with Commodore Dewey in wresting the power from the Spaniards. While it may not be true that Dewey promised Aguinaldo American recognition of Philippine independence, yet it is nevertheless true that there was an informal alliance between Dewey and Aguinaldo, an alliance to fight a common enemy, the Spaniards. There was therefore a moral as well as a legal basis for the American authorities to treat Aguinaldo as an ally. And yet, when they finally succeeded in increasing their number in the Philippines and in agreeing secretly to the surrender of Manila, they treated Aguinaldo as if he were an escaped convict. There was absolutely no reason why the Americans should not have allowed their Filipino allies to share the hour of glory in the surrender of Manila. There was much less reason why the Americans should have ordered Aguinaldo to withdraw from the suburbs of Manila after the surrender of the city. Such American actuation showed that they used Aguinaldo merely as a tool for their own selfish purpose. More significantly, their attitude towards Aguinaldo showed that they came to the Philippines not as a friend, but as an enemy masking as a friend. It was therefore not strange that Aguinaldo and his men looked upon the Americans with suspicion. In such an atmosphere, all that could be expected was friction. When in December 1898, the Treaty of Paris was signed without even consulting the Filipino people and the representatives of the Filipino-American alliance that was forged under the pressure of necessity gave way to mutual hostility. McKinley's Benevolent Assimilation Proclamation. Before the conclusion of the Treaty of Paris, President McKinley pretended not to know what to do with the Philippines. Actually, there were American vested interests who pressured him into taking the Philippines from Spain. The American economic interests who were thinking of expanding American business in the Orient. The naval and military interests who wanted the Philippines as the first line of American defense, and the religious interests who wanted the Philippines as a base of operations for American Protestant missionaries. So, after ng Spaniard na Catholic, ito naman sa American Protestant naman. and the religious interests who wanted the Philippines as a base of operations for American Protestant missionaries. McKinley could not ignore this vested interest, and so he finally instructed the American peace commissioners in Paris to demand the decision of the Philippines to the United States. It is evident that from the outset that the Americans never really intended to help the Filipinos win their independence from Spain, for had it been otherwise, they would not have sent successive reinforcements to the Philippines. With the Treaty of Paris concluded to the satisfaction of the American vested interests, McKinley issued his so-called Benevolent Assimilation Proclamation on December 21, 1898. This proclamation was the first official indication of American policy regarding the Philippines. It expressly indicated the intention of the United States to stay in the Philippines by exercising the right of sovereignty over the Filipinos. In other words, the United States would assume control and disposition of the government of the Philippines. At the same time, President McKinley instructed his military commanders in the Philippines to extend American sovereignty over the entire country by force. Kawawa talaga Pilipino, no? After ng Spaniards, Amerika naman. General Ewell Otis, who received the proclamation, sat on it for a time in order not to antagonize the Filipinos further, for he knew that they were in a bad mood. Thus he reasoned out, after fully considering the President's proclamation and the temper of the Tagalog with whom I was daily discussing political problems and the friendly intentions of the United States government towards them, I concluded that there were certain words and expressions therein, such as sovereignty, right of cession, and those which directed immediate occupation, etc., though most admirably employed and tersely expressive of actual conditions, might be advantageously used by the Tagalog war party to incite widespread hostilities among the natives. The ignorant classes had been taught to believe that certain words as sovereignty, protection, etc. had a peculiar meaning, disastrous to their welfare and significant of future political domination like that from which they had recently been freed. In order to comply with the President's order and at the same time not to antagonize unduly the Filipinos, Otis published McKinley's proclamation on January 4, 1899, with some amendments inserted in such a way as not to convey the meanings of the original sovereignty, protection, and right of cession. Filipino reaction. Unfortunately for the Americans, however, General Miller, then in Iloilo, published the original text of the proclamation. A copy fell into the hands of the officials of the revolutionary government. The proclamation was immediately subjected to severe attacks. Antonio Luna, editor of La Independencia, led the attack on the proclamation and pointed out that it was merely a subterfuge to quiet the people. No, wait. Ulitin ko lang ha. Antonio Luna, editor of La Independencia, led the attack on the proclamation and pointed out that it was merely a subterfuge to quiet the people temporarily until measures could be inaugurated and applied to put in practice all the odious features of government which Spain had employed in the Philippines. On January 5, Aguinaldo issued a counter-proclamation in which he said partly, "My government cannot remain indifferent in view of such a violent and aggressive seizure of a portion of its territory by a nation which arrogated to itself the title of champion of oppressed nations. Thus it is that my government is disposed to open hostilities if the American troops attempt to take forcible possession of the Visayan Islands. I denounce these acts before the world in order that the conscience of mankind may pronounce its infallible verdict as to who are the true oppressors of nations and the tormentors of mankind." Tama nga naman, di ba yung nakuha lang nila, ang nangyari dyan, nagwagay yung Americans sa Spaniards doon lang sa Manila Bay, diba? Doon sa Manila lang. So it means yung Bisayan, hindi pa talaga nila nakuha. Dapat talaga lumaban ang mga Pilipino. In a revised proclamation issued the same day, Aguinaldo protested most solemnly against the intrusion of the United States government on the sovereignty of these islands. Otis regarded the Aguinaldo proclamation as tantamount to war. He quietly strengthened the American observation posts and alerted his troops. The tense atmosphere of the period was reflected in the evacuation of the Filipinos in and around Manila to safer places. On the other hand, Aguinaldo's proclamations drew the masses together with a vigorous determination to fight the ally-turned-enemy. Attempts to relax the tension. Aguinaldo, however, tried his best to relax the Filipino-American tension. He knew that an armed conflict with the Americans would necessitate more and bitter sacrifices on the part of the people, and that not having sufficient arms and ammunition, the Filipino troops would be at a terrible disadvantage. Consequently, he wrote Otis on January 9, notifying him of the appointment of Florentino Torres, Ambrosio Flores, and Emmanuel Argeles to meet with the same number of American commissioners. The purpose of the meeting of the commissioners was to work out a plan for the adjustment of the conflicting political interests on both parties. On the same day, Otis appointed General R.P. Hodges, Colonel James F. Smith, and Lieutenant Colonel A.H. Crowder to meet with the Filipino Commission. The conference began on January 9 and continued intermittently up to January 29. All through the series of conferences, the American panel tried to fool the Filipino panel into believing that the Americans were ready to hear and to consider Filipino aspirations. In reality, however, they wanted the conference to continue indefinitely pending the arrival of American reinforcements from the United States. The situation, therefore, was this. Since the American volunteers in Manila were not enough to fight the Filipinos, it was necessary for the American commissioners to prolong the conference with the Filipino commissioners in order to give the American reinforcements time to arrive in the Philippines before hostilities could start. The conference did not yield a tangible result, nor did it succeed in relaxing the Filipino-American tension. On the contrary, the Filipino military officers suspected that the Americans were merely fighting for time. Another meeting of the Filipino and American commissioners was scheduled for January 31, but owing for the increasing restlessness and hostility of the Filipinos, it was not held. Otis pleaded with Florentino Torres, a well-known American sympathizer, to exert his best efforts in influencing the Malolos government to stop the hostile demonstration against the United States. But Torres was only a minor official whose voice in the government was negligible. And so the tension increased with no hope of relaxation. Hanggang dito na lang, guys. Bukas na yung San Juan Bridge incident. Bye everyone. God bless.